As the war in Ukraine rages on, new information has emerged. Photos showing a massive convoy of purported Russian military vehicles are making their way into the country. And according to Ukraine, Belarusian forces joining Russia have already invaded the country. And I don't know exactly what's true. I do know that the wave of propaganda that came out very early on is mostly false, and we now have mainstream media backing it up. Everything they were claiming about these heroes and these amazing stories, lies. And I'm going to show you the ghost of Kiev, probably not real. I said probably because, well, there's been no evidence it is. You know what I should say? I should say not real. I'll just say that, not real. You know why? Because there's no evidence proving the actual fighter pilot exists. There's been some statements by the government, I guess. But the only footage that apparently came out was from a video game. So, not real. Then you have Snake Island. It's now confirmed that the guys on Snake Island, these are the guys who told Russia to go F themselves, alive. They didn't, maybe they really did say Russia go F yourself, sure, but they weren't killed. And you had all these, like left establishment activists being like, they died. Whoa, man. Well, I'll tell you what's going on right now. Fog of war. And I find this is a truly fascinating phenomenon. What you're seeing on the screen, for those that are watching the video or click the title, this is President Volodymyr Zelenskyy performing what's called the red salute. And I differentiate the red salute from the raised fist specifically because of the angle of his arm. So you may have seen people at protests, they raise their fist up in the air. And that is considered to be like defiance or solidarity or revolution or something like that. What Zelenskyy is doing is he's holding his arm at a right angle and performing a fist that exposes the fingers in your direction. The purpose of showing the fingers facing forward is it's a sign of the initial idea was each individual finger was weak, but together they're strong. Now, the reason I'm showing this is because I have a question about fog of war and trying to understand what's really happening. Is Vladimir Putin actually fighting against the communist New World Order and Zelenskyy is performing the communist fist? I have no idea. Maybe Zelensky's just an idiot, doesn't know what he's doing. It's possible. I mean, he was just a comedian. Maybe he really doesn't know. Maybe he sees this, doesn't understand the connotations of what it means to raise a communist fist right now, and he's just doing it because he thinks it means solidarity, I suppose. To some people, that is what it means. But I think that's, I don't think it matters, right? If someone was performing the Nazi salute, and they said, oh, I didn't know what it meant. I thought it meant like, stand up strong or something. I'd be like, I don't care. Like, if the ideology of these groups has persisted and evolved to the point where you've adopted it and you don't understand the underlying messaging you're putting out, I mean, that's on you, right? So we have a bunch of news about fog of war. And I think one of the most fascinating things is this. Russia will continue the military operation in Ukraine until its goals are achieved and will host the first international anti-fascist conference in August, says Defense Minister Shoigu, or however you pronounce it. I find that to be truly the most hilarious. Okay, hold on a minute. Who are the communists and the bad guys in this circumstance? Vladimir Putin's holding an anti-fascist conference, but Zelenskyy is doing the communist fist. So they're both communists fighting each other. Russia is remnants of the old communist Soviet Union aligned with communist China. But Zelenskyy, who's working with the communist World Economic Forum, raising the communist fist, is the real conspiracy theory that the whole thing is staged and they're all communists working together. Or the goal is to manipulate you, to convince you to side with one person or the other. Perhaps Zelenskyy is performing this fist simply because he knows American left-wing activists perform it and he's trying to earn favor with the dominant political establishment. Perhaps Vladimir Putin is claiming anti-fascism or whatever because he's trying to manipulate the left as well because he wants activists in the United States who support Antifa or anti-fascism to be like, well, he must not be bad or something like that. Of course, they'll come out and claim he's not really Antifa, he's a fascist. And it's funny because it's like, then they sound like conservatives when conservatives criticize Antifa for not really being anti-fascist. You see, this is what I love about the fog of war. What is true? It's hard to know. What I can say is there are some things that are easy to break down. Zelenskyy has applied for EU membership, and this means Russia will go 10 times harder. I mean, maybe not 10 times harder, but they're going to be it will bolster Vladimir Putin's resolve to a certain degree. Putin does not want Ukraine aligning with the West. So this seems like Zelenskyy giving a big middle finger to Putin. Now, the latest reporting I've heard is that the application has been accepted, not approved, meaning Ukraine, the highest-ranking officials, president, prime minister, they've signed the document saying they want to join the EU. Of course they want to join the EU. Of course they want to be in the Schengen zone. It doesn't mean it will be approved. But of course that means Russia has every reason now to take Ukraine in its entirety. Here's a story from Daily Mail. A hero's salute, is that what they call it? Zelenskyy raises his fist as he acknowledges standing ovation after telling EU politicians, "We are sacrificing our lives for freedom," amid claims Belarus troops have entered Ukraine while huge Russian convoy snakes towards Kiev. Okay, let's read the latest updates here. But I want to point out, just go to the raised fist Wikipedia. And it says the raised fist or clenched fist is a long-standing image of mixed meaning, often a symbol of political solidarity. It is also a common symbol of communism and can be used as a salute to express unity, strength, and resistance. The thing is, you had two big salutes during the early 1900s, the Red Salute and the Roman Salute. The Roman Salute was adopted by fascists and Nazis. That's, of course, what you see the Nazis do, raising their arm in a straight angle. It's the Roman Salute. You then have the communist Red Fist, which was the 90-degree right angle fist showing its fingers facing you. Again, the idea being the fingers together are strong. It's interesting that one, you can perform walking down the street and the mainstream media supports you, and the other, you'll lose your job and you'll be canceled and all that stuff. Both are political extremes. Both are extremist ideologies. The use of the fist as a salute by communists and anti-fascists is first evidence in 1924 when it was adopted by the Communist Party of Germany's Roter Frontkampfverbund, Alliance of Red Front Fighters. Okay, sure. Popular front salute or anti-fascist salute. Okay. Anti-fascist action, of course, was the militant wing of the German Communist Party before the rise of the Nazis. And so, yeah, it very much does mean that. And maybe it's a dog whistle, they like to say, or maybe Zelenskyy just has no idea what he's doing. But he did it. They're going to say, the Ukrainian president, who has become a symbol of courage, composure, and defiance in recent days, addressed parliamentarians in Brussels via video link from Kiev, which is currently facing down a 40-mile convoy of Russian tanks and artillery, seemingly intent on surrounding and bombing the city into submission. Zelenskyy urged the EU to recognize Ukraine as a member, a move sure to infuriate Vladimir Putin, saying his nation has proved that we are your equals, and it is now time to prove that you are at our side. It came as Ukraine claimed that Belarusian troops have now entered the war, as Russia's close ally helps tighten the noose. I can no longer say hello or good evening, because every day is the last day, he added. Lives are being sacrificed for values, for rights, for freedoms. To have the same equality that you enjoy, we will win, I'm sure. I would like to hear you say that Ukraine's choice to be part of Europe is also your choice. We want to be members of the EU. Without you, Ukraine will be alone. This is exactly why Russia is invading. You can agree or disagree. You can say one side's right or wrong. But the point is, Putin believes, and there's some truth. I mean, there's political conflict. It's all perspective. So let's go back in time to 2014. There was a protest at Maidan. They called it Euromaidan. They called it Independence Square. I believe it's Independence Square. Ukrainians were protesting. They wanted to join the EU. I mean, think about it. You're Ukraine. It's very hard to travel through Europe. You join the European Union. You get in the Schengen zone. Now you have free travel. So for those who don't know, the Schengen zone is this area, I think it's like 26 countries, where you can freely travel with open borders. In the United States, imagine it this way. When you drive from New York to New Jersey, there's no border guards. Even though they're different states with different jurisdictions, they're different jurisdictions, they're different laws. It's generally the idea with the Schengen zone, kind of, that you can be in France and drive to Germany and just it's open. No one stops you and checks your passport. If Ukraine was allowed to enter the EU, Ukrainians who have a really bad economy could then go to not to the UK anymore because of Brexit, but they could go to these other countries like France or Germany and find better paying jobs. And thus, it would be good for the Ukrainian citizens who want to go work somewhere else. But ultimately, it could be very bad for their country and the EU because Ukraine's economy is not strong enough. So it would basically create this this lopsided circumstance economically. And we've seen that with Greece and we've seen it with Spain. It doesn't work out all that well. But I digress. Russia doesn't want more EU member states or NATO states on their borders. But more importantly, Vladimir Putin has stated his view, whether he's right or wrong, I'm not saying he's right. His view stated is that the U.S. basically propped up this fake regime in 2014 after the ousting of the president Yanukovych, who then fled to Russia. And then they put in, there was a temporary acting president, then there was Poroshenko, and now there's Zelenskyy. And Putin views these as illegitimate. He thinks that these elections were shams and that this is a propped up regime. And look, if Putin believes that, maybe he's wrong. I got to tell you, I know people in Ukraine. I've asked them. I was on the ground in 2014. People in Kiev, they're like, we're very much more Western, very pro-Europe, very pro-EU, and we don't trust Russia because of the Soviet Union and the Holodomor. In the East, it's different. Putin's perspective is of the East. He doesn't trust the government in Ukraine. And now that Zelenskyy is just rushing through being a member state of the EU, his view is Ukraine has lost their independence, and you now have a regime that wants to give Ukrainian sovereignty effectively to Brussels or to Germany, to the EU. And we've seen what happens to a lot of these states under the boot in the EU. And I'm not saying it's all bad. I'm not saying any of it's true. I'm saying this is the perspective in this conflict. Of course, the West will argue that Putin is just trying to invade Ukraine and take over and trying to get a more favorable play for himself, because Russia wants to expand the Trade Federation. He wants to bring back something akin to the Soviet Union, the Great Russian Empire. So that's more of the Western perspective. Quote, I'm sorry, I read that already. So let's read. They say his speech came in stark contrast to pre-recorded message delivered by Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov to the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva, during which he attempted to blame the unfolding carnage on Kiev, prompting dozens of Western diplomats to walk out in a show of solidarity. There are fears that Russia is about to massively step up its assault on Ukraine, including on its major cities, using heavy and indiscriminate bombardments. Now, there's been video coming out of a government building in Kharkiv being bombed and civilians being killed. I got to point out, fog of war, man. Let's talk about fog of war. PolitiFact of all sources. The Ghost of Kiev clip is from a video game, not a video of fighting in Ukraine. PolitiFact. These are left Democrat activists. They say a Ukrainian pilot nicknamed the Ghost of Kiev is rumored to have shot down several Russian aircraft. It is unclear if such a pilot exists. Just say it's not true. Listen, if someone comes out and says the Ghost of Kiev, the champion of Madrid, he rode on the back of a bull and stormed through and conquered the fascists or whatever, it's like, bro, you can say whatever you want. Pics or it didn't happen. If they want to claim the Ghost of Kiev exists, you need proof he exists. If you have these videos and they're from a video game, it's not real. Okay, then. I'm just going to go and say the story's fake. Fake. There's a lot more. Take a look at this one. Snake Island border guards who were feared dead. Feared? We were told they sacrificed their lives. After telling Russian Navy to go F yourself, are alive and are being held as prisoners of war by Russia. Oh, okay, well, maybe they still said go F yourself. Cool. And then they got taken captive. The story was that Russia killed them because they want you to hate. They want you to hate Russia. If you hate them, you oppose them ideologically, then they can use you in their war effort. I understand it. I understand why they do it, but I'm not a fan. The truth will set you free. Take a look at this tweet from Yossi Gestetner. He makes a bunch of points about profit and what's going on, but one thing he brings up that I thought was interesting, he says, we are being had by the hour. Time magazine cover, fake. Ukrainian presenter taking up arms. It's a paintball shooting. Ghost of Kiev, fake. Snake Island massacre, fake. Putin fired his top general yesterday, fake. 5,300 dead Russians in 4 to 5 days, sure. Everything goes. Many people who are against shutting down travel from 6 countries until we can figure out what the hell is going on favor sanctions on random Russians. App pays are down. Web hosting, immigration, visas, college students, and more. It's always about agendas, never about morals. Nailed it. There are people in the U.S. that are saying we should ban Russians from schools. People are vandalizing Russian buildings. It's insane. You see exactly how war plays out regardless of whose side it is, because people are zombie NPCs, non-player characters. You have people right now wanting to punish random Russian citizens over the actions of what Russia is doing. We're seeing that people in Russia are struggling to use their trains. You know what's funny? We talk about how collateral damage is wrong and bombing civilians and all that stuff is wrong. Who do you think runs the economy that fuels the war effort? Who do you think makes the weapons that are used by the military? Who do you think's facilitating the actual war effort? There is no strong distinction in a serious war between civilians and military. By all means, people can say, oh, that's controversial. The idea being that in modern European-based warfare, you have rules of engagement, you have war crimes, and we have gentlemanly combat. But let me clarify what I mean. Killing civilians is wrong. We view war as take out their if you've got someone who's holding a club, the idea is to disarm them of the club, but not to kill the person, just take away their ability to fight. So when we go after military installations, we're trying to shut down their ability to fight and not harm the civilians who aren't involved in the fight. But let's talk about actual war, not this European gentlemanly, we must abide by the rules. You want to talk about real war? Real war is anything goes, and that's scary. When people talk about war crimes, they say, yeah, but war crimes exist when there's international courts to uphold them. If you have a country that says, we want you dead and we will do anything, do you think they're going to be deterred? So you can criticize Russia all day, every day. I certainly think bombing civilian targets is wrong. They bombed a government building. But I'm pointing out, if the West is targeting critical infrastructure, it's hurting civilians. Now, why is that okay? They're going to starve out. If you've got modern warfare, which is cyber war, we're seeing ATMs being shut down. We're seeing electric car charging being shut down. We're seeing trains processing being shut down. How is the targeting of civilians with economic damage, how is that okay? The reality is, when it comes to war, people target civilians because civilians facilitate the war. You take away all of the civilians of Russia, who's going to fuel Putin's ships? Who's going to fuel his vehicles? Who's going to become soldiers? Who's going to make the bullets? Who's going to make the guns? Who's going to transport them? Of course, there are people in the army and the military who can do a lot of these things. But the GDP, the economics, the facilitation of resources come from civilians. So you better be damn sure that if you're dealing with a real war, you recognize they will kill civilians and they will do it strategically. That is to say, shutting down the critical infrastructure of Moscow to negatively impact civilians hinders their economic growth and their economy in general. And that will harm Vladimir Putin. Of course, it means that people in Russia will not be able to transport food. They will start starving out and they will suffer greatly. And that's the goal in war. The West is hoping that by choking out and strangling out, figuratively and literally, I suppose, these Russian civilians, popular support will turn against Putin, and the people of Russia will say, submit. Therein lies the big question. Do the people of Russia hold similar values to Vladimir Putin? I believe, well, it depends on who you ask. There are certain polls in the West, they say the polls are faked and everyone hates Putin. But I talk to people, when I was in Ukraine and I talk to Russians and they say they love Putin. So it depends. Are the people of Russia willing to forego conveniences if it means winning this conflict? Or are they just going to say, I just want to be on OnlyFans and play video games? What motivates the Russian people? That's the big question. I'm not entirely convinced it's being anti-fascist. Sure, I guess, if Russia is the communists. Vox.com reports, Putin's Nazi rhetoric reveals his terrifying war aims in Ukraine. Russia's president says he wants the denazification of Ukraine. That actually means regime change. The West supported regime change in Ukraine and in Syria, and Vladimir Putin is doing the same thing. The problem? Suppose there's a big difference between the East and the West. Putin lost the influence game. Hands down, lost it. You look at popular culture, social media, big tech, all of that stuff. Of course, Russia has their own infrastructure, but everyone is using Western global technologies. The payment processors, Apple Pay, Google Pay. You know what? Russia, China, this is your Achilles heel. So, of course, they're trying to build their own to get past this. But this shows you how the U.S. has gained tremendous control over the population of Russia. Not completely. But when they want to use OnlyFans, they can't. They're going to complain about it. More westernized Russians, I suppose. Russia will need to build infrastructure to get away from that. But think about this. Well, I'll put it this way. I like the game Civilization. It's a video game. Civilization, and I think, what are they on, 6 or 7? I don't know. I've been playing it since I was a kid. The first one I played was Civilization 2. In it, you build a civilization, and you can go to war and stuff like that. It's a really, really fun game if you haven't played it. In the modern versions of Civilization, there are many ways to gain a victory, a science victory, a military victory, a cultural victory. Within the game, there's an interesting phenomenon. You build cities. Settlers build cities. You develop the cities. Your borders expand. Eventually, after time goes on, your borders butt up against the borders of other countries. Early on in human history, there were big swaths of no man's land that no one had claimed, and then eventually people claimed it. If you have a city very close to another city in the game, and you focus on building culture, exporting music and art, as your culture expands, your borders expand. That's how your borders grow initially. But what happens when your borders are pressing up against the borders of other countries? If you dominate culturally, eventually the people, it's hard to do, but eventually the people in a foreign city will actually, your borders will encroach on theirs, and they will vote to join your country. Now, it's just a video game. The idea is the concept exists in modern understanding of how war works. Russia is dealing with this. Western culture is influencing Ukraine, and now Ukraine is favoring the West. Russia doesn't want that. They don't like the idea that Western culture has taken over in Ukraine to a great degree, so they opt for the military occupation. Their culture, Russian culture, is not working. It is not expanding, so they go in by force. But you know what that means? They're losing the minds of the people. You can occupy a country with guns, but people will resist. You need to win the hearts and minds. That's why I always say nonviolent civil disobedience works. Putin is losing that. I don't know if occupation will work. I really don't, because the people of Ukraine are going to say no. But we'll see. How many people in Ukraine do support Russia and oppose the West? I don't think enough. But again, war is here. We'll see how this plays out. China may be forced to enter on the side of Russia. They're already going to be providing, financial services. There's reports that every adversary of the U.S., whether it's beneficial or not, will be trying to aid Russia in their economy due to the sanctions. They're going to try and aid them economically. I don't know if a World War III will be an even match. Russia doesn't have they've got, like a third to half the power of the Western nations of NATO and the United States. They do have more nukes, though. And I think Putin, he's not going to want to lose. It's possible he uses them. But anyway, I'll leave it there. More, the next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.